Looking at history, all successful revolutions compared to contemporary Gen Z movements have revealed several differences in strategy but also context. Listen, and the dichotomy begins right from its organizing structures. As history dictates, all successful revolutions typically had centralized leadership with a clear hierarchy that effectively helped the movement in matters decision making. If you remember pretty well, the American Revolution had figures like Washington and the Continental Congress, while the Russian Revolution was under the stewardship of Bolshevik. And contrary to this, all the Gen Z movements have always preferred a decentralized and leaderless structure, thus making strategic planning very much difficult. Essentially, from what history dictates, contrary to the Gen Z movement, all the successful revolutions always focused on concrete objectives like 1. Overthrowing the government, 2. Maybe something like gaining their independence, or 3. Seizing state power. But contrary to this, the Gen Z movements usually just address broader and more complex issues that have no clear endpoints. However, as history dictates, also, all past revolutions often occurred during periods of secure crisis like economic collapse and military defeat or even extreme oppression from the governments of the day. And of course, all this happened when millions of people pushed for radical change. But if I am just to speak of the Gen Z movements that we've in the past few years witnessed, the current system of the day is well established to an extent that there are several institutions that the Gen Z are allowed to present their grievances so that they will be listened by the same state authorities. However, all the past old revolutions required years of sustained efforts, and that is strictly as per what history dictates. And of course, most of them needed personal sacrifice. But looking at the kind of movements that we've recently been witnessing, the convenience of modern life and multiple competing priorities make it harder to sustain long-term revolutionary commitment. And if you ask me, this could be one among the main problems as to why the Gen Z movements have never been very successful, unlike the past revolutions, because the old past revolutions, people will sacrifice their lives for the sake of what they were advocating for, unlike the current generation, to which could easily be compromised by the same state that they are fighting. But all said and done, with all these differences between the decade revolutions and the modern Gen Z movement, they too have also managed to attain some change in the modern societies. But with all this said and done, we must ask ourselves, is it still possible that traditional revolution models are still relevant in our modern democratic context? Because, as I said earlier, the past revolutions were well organized and had a hierarchy system of commanding power, unlike the modern Gen Z movements, of which they prefer being leaderless and having no a central commanding station. And that, if you ask me, could be one among the many nitty-gritty reasons as to why there has always been confusion as the movements are on. Because if you don't have a centralized commanding station, then that is to mean anyone can do anything that they feel is right and not as per their advocacy and the same fight. How I wish that having a centralized form or a centralized commanding point, it also comes with a lot of ramifications, like maybe the centralized hierarchy of power are likely or easily to be compromised by the same state, thus bringing to the whole movement to a stop. So if you ask me, any of the revolutions, as much as it directly affects each one of us, and as much as each one of us has sacrificed for the movement with a solid purpose and unity, I kid you not, they are likely to make it a success. But from where I sit, that has just been my opinion. If by any chance you do have a contrary opinion to mine, you can as well just feel free to drop them in the comment section and I'll give them a right of reply. And by any chance, if you have been watching my videos and you have not subscribed, you can as well just consider hitting on the subscribe button. Thank you and may God bless you.